Welcome back to Retromancers, everyone. As you're probably aware, Game of Thrones Season 3 is upon us. And if you're like us, or anyone else in the local galactic cluster, you're probably pretty excited about it. So what better time than now to start a new segment on our channel called Head Games. And what are Head Games?
It's really essentially a segment dedicated to going on a tangent. Just taking some idea or theme from a game and just saying, what if we dove into it a little bit further, see where it takes us?
Or apply it to something.
Exactly.
So in this case, we're going to take the alignment system from, everyone's old favorite first RPG, Dungeons and Dragons, and apply that to Game of Thrones characters. Since I know I have, I'm not sure about you, but frequently on Facebook or whatever, I see those memes, everyone posting where all the characters fit in the alignment charts, and I for one think they're a little bit off.
Yes, there definitely is some gray area that's up for discussion, and we figured,
why not dive into it?
It's Friday night. What better way to spend it than discussing Dungeons and Dragons and Game of Thrones?
Seriously not geeky at all.
No.
But before we dive in, a couple of quick disclaimers. One, we're only going to talk about what's been in the show since neither of us have currently read the book. And two, in line with that, there's going to be a lot of details discussed, so consider this your spoiler alert.
And also, I just want to make this a point that these videos will not have any impact on how frequent our gameplay videos will be released.
Okay, so that being said, I think it's time to jump right into the characters. Ned Stark. What would you put Ned Stark at?
In all the charts I've seen, and it just seems to, a unanimous that he goes into lawful good.
Even though that seems to be like a really easy one, I think there is a little detail to discuss here just to flesh it out. In that, obviously he's a very lawful character and is concerned about, what will be good for the kingdom and everything. So I think the lawfulness is just really easy to spot, right?
Right.
But then, you might go, well, is he really good? Good, because, he kills that guy in the beginning. Killing, is that really good? He has that unexplained indiscretion with some other woman, right?
True.
But I just want to talk about that classic scene in the beginning where he has to execute the Night Watchman. And I think it really does prove his lawful goodness that is then carried through the rest of the series. You can tell he's really thinking on both of the axes. Obviously he has to do this to uphold the law. But you get the sense that he's not just doing it because it's the law and that's it. It's because he's really thinking about how will this impact the good of the people?
Right, when that scene plays out, you hear his plea. He's actually delivering a message that the White Walkers are back. Everyone better get their shit together. And he's kind of conflicted in that he believes what he's saying. He knows he wouldn't have run away if it wasn't important. But at the same time, he did break the rules, and in this case, punishment is death. So he didn't want to do it, but he knew he had to,
right,
just to maintain stability in the realm, or
right,
at least in...
And not just because the law is a law, but because stability is something that affects your peace and happiness of the populace.
Right.
And also, in the doing of that action, you can tell that, Eddard was really kind of sympathetic with this Night Watchman, and then that whole, I think, key phrase that he says to his sons, where, you understand why I have to wield the blade, which is, taking personal responsibility, and that, to me, really speaks to, justice of character.
Right. Yeah. And I think also, as a quick side note, is by performing the execution in this manner, it's almost yes, he's being killed, but it's an honorable way. So it's more of, rather than him running away and being disgraced and it following his lineage, which seems to be a fairly
big deal.
Yeah. It's by killing him in this way, everyone will look at him more honorably than as,
the guy who ran
a deserter.
Away.
Exactly.
Yeah. And as far as him cheating on his wife, we don't really know the story of that, and we get the sense from the way he talks to Jon Snow that there is some kind of story there, but it might just be what does Robert say, that it was times of war?
Yeah, it was just times of war. No one knew they were going to come back alive. It was just, more of an act of passion than, sound judgment or,
Which could throw morality into question, but, one, he was much younger man. We don't know how that person compares to the Ned that we're seeing now. And also through bringing Jon Snow back and the way he kind of managed that situation, you can tell he feels like remorse, and we don't know the circumstances of that. So I don't think that pulls him off the lawful good alignment.
No, it's definitely, he sees that this mistake is now his burden to bear.
Right.
So despite making that lapse in moral judgment, it's now he's been trying to atone for that in raising him as a legitimate son.
Stark. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And, I guess the bottom line is that through what we've seen of him on the show, he has always maintained lawfulness and goodness of character. So, definitely.
Yeah, it's a pretty firm decision on lawful good.
Ned Stark, lawful good. So now we got Ned Stark firmly in that lawful good spot. Let's look at the opposite end of the chart in chaotic evil to a character that I believe is incorrectly placed in that designation, which would be Joffrey.
I think it's more of his erratic behavior that people interpret as chaotic.
Not like a philosophy.
Right, it's not what...
He's just unstable.
Yeah, he definitely could use some sort of medication.
Right.
Maybe more milk of the puppy.
Yeah, but I think you agree, or your statement agrees with what I'm thinking, in that I think a lot of people tend to misinterpret instability as chaotic, which it can be, but in this case I don't think it is, because Joffrey's whole deal, the vehicle of his evil, sadistic bastardness is tyranny, is like, you lowborn peasant have to do what I, the king, say. And if that's your angle, that is the definition of lawful evil.
Yeah, he commits heinous acts, but through the law.
What was that perfect example with the minstrel or whatever?
Right. The bard was singing some song about his supposed father, King Robert Baratheon, and making more of a mockery of his life. And at the end, Joffrey gives a sarcastic clap, and I think he does anyway.
Clap. Yeah.
And he's like, what would you choose, your hands or your tongue? And once he realizes what this will mean, it ultimately leads to him, the bard, losing his tongue. But it's that kind of
being an evil bastard, but still, it's like, this is my decree.
Right, you're in my court, bitch.
Yeah, so maybe you'll disagree, but I definitely think lawful evil for Joffrey.
I can go with that, but now it's a matter of what would fit chaotic evil.
You can arrive there from two angles. True, madness, chaos, or you might be very ordered and structured, but just have a philosophical aim to sow chaos in the land. So do we have any characters that fit either of those?
It's a hard call to make. I mean, there are chaotic characters, but
I don't think we have any, raving, sadistic, just lunatic bad people. Maybe some wildlings, but probably not. Or the mountain men that Tyrion checks up with.
But even then, you could make fairly easy cases that they're just living by their code and not really one of maliciousness or harm.
Philosophical chaos. Either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's just their methods might be unorthodox.
Just like tribal.
Exactly. So in those cases, it's they're different than civilized realms, but it doesn't fall under evil.
So then, if that's off the charts, do we have any characters that could be considered as philosophically promoting chaos and evil?
One of the minor characters that you see near the tail end of season 2 is the Warlock in the Qarth.
Yes, he likes the blue juices or whatever.
Yeah, he definitely likes his potions and dragons. Yeah. I wouldn't be fully confident in him as chaotic evil. Definitely evil, just because all his motives seem driven by personal gain and reasons.
I mean, I could buy it, but I'm not happy with filling the slot with him because, one, he's a minor character, and two, we're not really sure. So is there a better, more major character that can fit this?
Melisandre? The
lady with
the
Stannis Baratheon?
Red Witch or whatever.
with the baby?
Shadow Baby.
Shadow Baby?
Assassin. I would say she would possibly be a more long-term candidate to fill in that chaotic evil spot.
She does seem to be supplanting the old order of the old gods, and it could be very believable that like she's really just like this agent of an evil, like chaotic deity is trying to sow like this. Yes, make war. Yes, kill your brother. Cause a huge world-ending, annihilatory, cosmic battle. Like it seems like that could be her pitch.
It looks like she's definitely scheming. She has her own motives behind it. It's not.
Yeah,
she could care less about who's king. She just knows in the end she wants to usurp whomever is the victor when they're at their weakest.
Right. Like Miang and Xenogears.
Yeah.
And there's also the whole matter of the baby. I think,
Yeah, that doesn't happen.
Yeah, maybe the demon baby is really like a nice, perfectly well-mannered gentleman. I don't know, but it sort of just reeks of evil on first look. So
maybe he just was out late drinking. Maybe he had a hard breakup, and he's just like, shit. Now I gotta go kill Renly. Fuck this.
I mean, Renly's not a great name, so that's a good enough reason to die.
Exactly. So
why not?
So we can't pass judgment on Shadow Baby, but. I think we can go with chaotic evil for
Melisandre.
Yes.
I'm comfortable with that for now. Melisandre, chaotic evil. Okay, so now that we've looked at some of the extremes, let's look at something more in the middle. Because I think the neutral category is kind of an interesting one. So I'm going to pick one person and see that I say goes in there, and you tell me if you agree. I'm going to say Sansa. I say she goes into neutral because of indecision, because of not taking a stand on anything. Do you agree?
It's interesting because you can kind of approach neutral in
various ways.
It's not that she doesn't care. I think her intentions are good. I think it's the fact that she is not a girl or woman, however old she's 16. Not a person of conviction.
I think the best scene that describes that is the scene where she's called on to like sort of either like out Joffrey or Arya.
Right, she's kind of put on the spot to act as the witness. She knew exactly what happened, and she took no side. She just says, I don't know what happened.
I don't remember, yeah.
I plead the fifth.
Yeah, and although we have to be wary about like pinning someone's alignment, which should be really kind of a generally immutable thing that doesn't just change based on the decisions and stuff at the moment, but I think that scene kind of speaks to a lot of her character, at least up until the very end of season 2, where it might get a little bit dicey.
Yeah, she just doesn't want to rock the boat. You can tell that she's conflicted and she wants to make a decision, as the scene where she was actually thinking of pushing Joffrey off the catwalk. She definitely wants to take action. She just can't commit to it.
Right.
At least not yet.
Not yet. I think as far as the law stuff, she doesn't really like. Yeah, I think she wants to be like a girl and pretty herself and, go on dates with Joffrey back when she liked him. Like a normal, she's generally a normal person. And I think that's an important thing to realize, is that although when you see these charts, it kind of gives an impression that like everything's sort of equal, like you can divide the world up into equal ninths of all these alignments.
Right.
It should be noted that neutral in either side should really encompass most people. Neutral's very wide. You have to be really an outlier to have like a fixed alignment, especially those in the corners like we talked about. Like people like Ned Stark and Joffrey are like really extreme personalities.
Right.
Most people fit into like, in the middle. And Sansa, at least, she seems in the beginning of the series like your generic, like she's a girl you can meet in high school, like she's just the girl.
Yeah. So she just falls into that category, but now she's in circumstances that will, I see will
test her.
Have an impact on where, she will be making a decision at some point.
Yes, but for now, Sansa Stark, neutral.
Sounds good.
Okay, so since we just talked about how you can arrive at neutral in a lot of different ways, I'm going to bring up another character that is probably going to be a weird pick for neutral, but let's see what you say. I'm going to say Jaime Lannister. Neutral, and just go with what you think.
Throwing it out there?
Yeah.
I don't think anyone would pick that from At least from what I've seen.
Or what would they pick? Tell me.
Neutral evil. I mean, the way they presented him in the beginning, his attempted murder of Bran Stark, and
Just casually.
things you do for love, attempted murder. He just tends to kill people too, which, again, killing isn't really a good thing.
Right, but also this is the Isle of Westeros, where things aren't exactly like they are in modern days. Let's talk about then the part that we agree on: the neutrality of the law and order, of the law and chaos and access.
He has a discussion when he's in the
jail cell or whatever it was
on the campsite, and he explains how there are all these rules and codes and laws that one must follow as a knight, and he just says it's just so convoluted and so complicated that
he wants to be his own man.
But
without any conviction to be chaotic or despite the law. He just wants to do his own thing. And I think that actually taps into why I'm going to say that I think his morality is on the neutral scale as well. He's obviously done some evil things, trying to kill Bran Stark,
Kingslayer.
Yeah, just being an all-around ass at times. But I just get the sense, and maybe this is just totally unfounded or based on just the strength of the acting, that up until this point in his life, it's like he's been like his father's shadow, and has been doing like what is the established order of things and what's expected of him, but like he really has this like other side that just like wants to like get out and be his own man, which I think in that scene with the squire that you're talking about is like, it's like the only part where he's like really just talking to someone like honestly, even though it's gonna kill him.
Right, he has his moment of honesty where most times he has to kind of put up a facade just for the sake of survival or just to please his father,
or even accommodate Cersei's situation she gets in, like I feel like that's it. Like he's a pragmatist. It's not like I want to kill this kid. It was just like this is what needs to be done, but that kind of moral looseness can be evil. But I don't know. I just sense that there's something emerging in that character. Like that's not really who he would be if he was free.
And then you have to think of fighting Ned Stark, and
the guy nailed his ankle or whatever.
Yeah, one of his cronies spears him in the calf, and you think, oh, this is it, easy kill, problem solved. But instead, he punches the crony for doing that, and it gives you that additional insight.
The whole Kingslayer thing too. It's like, there's a part of Jaime that I think like wants to be like what a boy envisions as like a virtuous, awesome knight, and that's why he's always challenging everyone to a duel and stuff like that. Because I'm the hero, right? But he's done kind of these like horrible things that he deems as necessary. But it's a very complicated thing. That's why I think he wears the Kingslayer mantle in such a weird way.
Yeah, he wants people to know that he is the Kingslayer. It's like,
even though it kind of like hurts him in a way. It's like self-flagellation.
Right. It's like, this is what I've done. I don't want anyone to forget that. It's those little things that kind of, it gives you that impression that
it's something under the surface there.
There is. And you don't see him really doing a lot of this for personal gain, or at least if he says, oh, I want to do this for glory or whatever, it's almost like he's just playing the part.
So based on that, I think it's very understandable to put him into a neutral evil category, but I feel like he might even have the potential to become like neutral good later. Like to me, he has the ability to pull like a Han Solo kind of character. I have no idea.
I'm not quite there yet, but the fact that I can't definitively say he's evil or consistently, then not to say by default you have to go with neutral. It just makes more sense to go with neutral than evil.
Yeah, so maybe unpopular, but let's say neutral, Jaime Lannister. Again, for now.
Yeah.
Alright, so we got a couple of characters under the belt. Is there any slot or character you want to move to next?
I think we should bring up probably everyone's favorite character.
Tyrion.
Tyrion.
Peter Dinklage. Everyone loves him. Okay. I know what my pick is. Do you have a pick?
At first I'd say he started at neutral, and based on all the events that has occurred through the second season, which I feel really developed his character much more than, not really comic relief, but comic relief. I would say he better fits neutral good.
Alright, so you actually are of the same mind as me. Yeah. I think to go out on a limb, I think he's actually the goodest of all the characters in the show, which is not where he's usually slotted as. He is a Lannister, so
right,
it's a downside for the morality.
So by being a Lannister, that already puts him at -5 morality.
Right.
Which, he does exhibit quite frequently with binge drinking and prostitutes.
Yeah.
So,
but again, the Isle of Westeros is a different time and a different place, so, who knows if that's
right
on morally or not, I don't know.
Right, so 10 pints and 3 whores, that's just, a typical day. But moving on from that, it's more of the actions that he does that looks like it's not driven by any sort of motive. He just wants to do good deeds.
Most normal people, again, fitting into the neutral slide, would want to help their friends and be loyal to their close friends and family. It's the person that wants to help the starving orphan on the other side of the planet and will actually act to do that is the good person. And I really feel that from Tyrion's character. Now, it's sort of intimated in the plot that maybe he does this because he's been so shit on his life and he sympathizes with, I forget the phrase he said, it's like something and broken things, something like that. And a good example is when he helps Bran Stark with the horse riding thing after he gets paralyzed. The way he kind of talks to Jon Snow, he identifies with other outsiders, and I just feel like he's a defender of the oppressed, which I think is something that's very important, and it goes beyond just I'm hurt, so I want to help hurt people. It's just he comes at it with a moral wisdom, I think.
Yeah, because his character could really have gone either way. He could become very spiteful and belligerent to society, and then kind of plot against it, in which case he could potentially easily fall into a chaotic evil role. He's the type of character that
has the backstory for that.
Exactly. Yeah. So the fact that he would lend some aid to Bran, even when his brothers essentially tried to kill him, though he didn't know at the time.
Yeah.
But it's just the fact that, I'm going to help, my rival house.
Yeah.
And even with Jon Snow, where he gives him that little speech that if you own up to the major flaw that, people will try to harm you with, it won't have the effect that
turn the flaw into a strength.
Exactly.
Especially with Jon Snow, he has no reason to do that. With Bran, you could argue that was actually nothing to do with morality. It was a shrewd political move. He just wants to be
to curry favor.
Yeah, to curry favor with all houses. When he comes to power, everyone will love him. And that could be true. I just really going again on maybe a feeling. I just don't get that feeling from the character.
Right, and I would say his defining moment would of course be the Battle of Blackwater, where Joffrey essentially comes up with
mother needs me.
Oh. What's that? No, I got a thing. I'm sorry. I totally would go out there and fight him, kill Stannis, easy. But
with my magic sword, the Stannis Slayer.
But my mom. I gotta go, guys. So at that point, I think
Tyrion then gives the best speech in TV history.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And essentially comes up with not a bad strategy, whereas kind of flank them from behind. He just wasn't expecting another wave of Baratheon's troops to come flank him afterwards.
Yeah, so I think we've established his goodness, right? But let's just pin down the neutrality on the law and order axis. Earlier characters that we've talked about have fit in neutral there through indecision or non-committalness, if that's a word. I think he fits into neutral out of versatility, out of a willful versatility. He can play all parts. He can, hang with the thugs and the brigands and work with them, or speak eloquently in the highest courts.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is very rare to have a character that has that trait of versatility, but also good. Usually when they have that versatility, it's more for personal gain. So It's interesting to have a character that plays both sides, but the ultimate goal is for the betterment of society.
So based on all of that, I think we're comfortable with the designation of Tyrion Lannister, neutral good.
Agreed.
Alright, so since we're talking about favorite characters, let's move to another one that I think is generally considered a fan favorite as well. That would be Arya Stark, who I think is another one that people put correctly in the charts at chaotic good. Do you agree with that?
She's definitely one that plays by her own rules. She doesn't fit the mold of a typical noble girl.
Yeah, and I think a scene that kind of brings into focus like both of these aspects is in that same scene we talked about with Sansa, of Joffrey and all that kind of stuff, where like she was just like no, like tell the truth, like that's all that matters. You guys are all like pandering and posturing and stuff, like
Right.
just tell how it is. And I think that kind of thing is like very clearly like both chaotic and good.
Right, she wants to do the right thing, and she doesn't really have any regard for, playing by the rules in terms of, the proper way to explain yourself, or, playing a political game and, make sure you don't disturb the stances of your family or anything like that. She'd rather do the right thing.
Yeah, even if it means that you have to buck all social trends to do so.
Exactly.
Yeah, so I think that's the epitome of chaotic good. But before we just pin her down, like as a rule, we got to look at some stuff in season 2, where obviously, with her relationship with the Faceless man, getting people killed and that kind of stuff, that might dip you over a little bit into some darker territories. Like with Tywin, especially when she starts to bond with him, and what I think is some of the more interesting scenes. Her scenes are always great in general, but like with Tywin, where she kind of, ends up as it was a cupbearer.
Yeah, I think that was just
some interesting dialogue there, and you figure like as you're watching that, you're like, oh, like maybe there's some kind of mutual respect being gained there, but then like she walks to the Faceless man, she's like, Tywin. Like I was like, all right, that's pretty cold-blooded,
Yeah, it seems like she, not that she was really playing the game, it's more of a sense of survival, since if he knew with, conviction that she was a Stark, it would have been a completely different scenario. It would have taken her hostage, and now it's a gambling chip in the war that is now going on. That's what makes those scenes so interesting, is the fact that he's so close to knowing. He figures out that she's from the north. He knows that she's from a noble family. So it's just so, it's like if he just was given one more hint that he would have figured it out. But the fact that he didn't, and his opinion of her is based on just knowing that she's just some noble girl from the north, which in general the Lannisters do not like.
Yeah.
So the fact that he respects her, and that seems to be a trend with Arya, that she's able to earn the respect of very powerful people.
But now we still got to talk about how this relates to her alignments and stuff. So again, all that being said, what does it speak to her alignment? The fact that she would have Tywin killed.
I think it's more of, he's going to hurt my family, so I have to kind of take care of him first. She didn't wish death upon him until she knew he was gonna make an attack on Robb Stark's camp.
Yeah.
It was almost like, oh shit, that's right. If I stop him, I can possibly end this war. It's funny because it's almost like the Faceless man acts as her genie. It's like, but he's more of a genie of death. It's like, give me 3 names and they will die. Don't worry about how it'll happen.
Just know that it will happen in a cool, badass fashion.
Exactly. So you think if another character had that, the decisions would be pretty straightforward and
plot ending.
She seemed like the best character to have that kind of power, where she kind of realizes, I've made bad decisions with my first 2 choices. I was thinking more of alright, save a few lives here, rather than I could have ended the war for everyone. Yeah,
so in that kind of light, it's interesting, because then it takes her decisions of essentially murder with the Faceless man. Like, instead of it being a descent into evil, you could view it in this way as sort of like a maturation of like moral responsibility. Of like, I like Tywin, but if I do this, it'll protect my family and save Westeros.
And that, again...
And she has the ability to, like, make that call, to, like, do it. Which a lot of people would, cower at that responsibility, but she can just, like, pull the trigger on it.
Yeah, a lesser person would just say, this is, too much of a burden on my, my soul or something like that, they couldn't do that.
Well, Arya, she don't got time for that.
No, she's too busy being badass.
Yeah. So I think we're comfortable, on this one, echoing the popular opinion of chaotic good for Arya Stark.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so we ranged around a bit.
Let's
see, what alignments don't we have? Do we have...
Don't have chaotic neutral.
All right. So we don't have chaotic neutral, and that's kind of like a tricky one to peg. So let's see. I know in Dungeons & Dragons, like, one way that you can get there is, like, to just be, like, a complete, like, raving lunatic that has, like, no regard for anything. Just, like, completely unpredictable behavior. Do you think we have any like that?
Not really. I mean, maybe, the Mountain? But I'm not sure what he's doing right now.
Yeah.
So, again, it's
no
lack
really,
of information.
Yeah.
You can't really... There's no one that's just, like, stark raving mad.
Yeah, so I don't think we have any chaotic neutral via lunacy. No. But do we have chaotic neutral from any other angle?
This one I've seen on a few charts, and I'll have to agree with it.
What you got?
Robert Baratheon.
Okay.
Old King Rob. Dead King Rob.
Long live the king.
Yes.
The king is dead. Okay. I think I can agree with that. So sell me on each part.
Alright, so neutral, it's fairly apparent throughout the show is he really doesn't give two shits. He even formed a small council to kind of do his job.
Well, that might actually more inform the chaotic side of things. So, like, he doesn't care about the law.
Okay, so in that sense...
He'd rather be, what are his catchphrases?
It was, eat, drink, and whore myself to an early grave.
Right, well, someone else manages the kingdom.
Yeah, when someone else runs my kingdoms. He's just not really in it. He's kind of been the king for 17 years, and I think it's just... He's become completely apathetic. And that might seem like, oh, well, he falls into neutral, but I think it's the way that he kind of still rules is where the chaos comes into play. And just the fact that he's got these, outbursts, and the fact that it's very, 1 minute he's best friends with Ned, and other times he's like, asking for his head. And it just seems like that's just the microcosm of how his
worldview has become.
Exactly. So,
yeah, I can sort of buy that. Definitely neutral in the morality. Again, because he just seems like a normal kind of guy, like not strongly, like he's not driven to help the homeless people, and he's not out of his way to just like,
oppress them.
To oppress people either. It's just like, whatever, although he does have some fun with like the page boy Lannister, but it's kind of funny.
Well, he had it come.
Yeah. Princess Valium, he's got sorry, it's the hair. Yeah, the whole chaotic thing, I definitely do think he's got that, like, I don't really care about society, which is really ironic because he's the king.
Yeah.
But what I think is interesting to note is that you get the sense that he might not have always been that way. Right?
No,
back when he was sallying forth with Ned in the good old days in the Great War.
Yeah, I would say back then he probably was potentially a lawful good person. At least until the uprising, where at that point...
I'm not sure, like, I will say I think he was probably good. I still see him as a chaotic, like, he was probably, like, the cliche, like, best friend of the main character who's, like, I'm the wild man who, like, does stuff and the ladies love me.
Right.
Like, he's, like, that kind of, like, wild, good character.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, Game of Thrones, the college years.
Yeah.
And have... like...
It's like, Ned, come over here with
Ned's
like Cindy and Sandy,
Ned's like, I gotta study this, Squire exam. The teacher's gonna have my head, literally, cue laugh track. And, Rob's like, come on. It's like, you
don't be such a square, Ned. This is a college humor doing like a little short on that. Going from that, I think what's really interesting is, although we're kind of extrapolating because we haven't read the books, it's probably the death of Ned's sister that changed all that. Like, he had this whole life planned and everything, and then, like, when that happened, he was like, what's it all for anymore?
Yeah, he alludes to that several times, that he had a true love and it was lost, and that very well could have been the shift from, say, more of a neutral good into chaotic neutral. And it probably wasn't even immediate transition. It probably kind of shifted from neutral good to neutral and made its way over as the years went by.
Yeah, I could buy that. And, you know, we should be very hesitant in talking about alignment shifts like this in the D&D context, because what you want to be careful of is like seeing like characters when they change how they're acting, like their alignments are shifting. The alignment should be something that's generally set. The same way like you act differently at like, you know, your mom's birthday party than you do at like the dance club. It's like not your alignment's not shifting, you just like change with the circumstances. That's normal. So generally like an alignment shift should be something that you talk about with great like reservation. Like it should be rare. But this, to me, sounds like it could have been an alignment shifting event for Robert Baratheon, definitely.
Yeah, so I think after all that, the final call would be chaotic neutral.
At least as we see him in the show. So, yeah, we agree with the masses on that one. Chaotic neutral, Robert Baratheon. So now we've got Robert Baratheon down. Let's circle to his small council. Or at least everyone except the old guy, because she's not too interesting.
Yeah.
So let's go to Varys, because I find him to be a very interesting character. What do you have to say about Varys?
It's tricky. I might have to go with neutral right now.
Okay, that seems like a safe answer.
I know it is.
Alright, neutral, I think we can buy on the Law and Order, on the Law and Chaos axis that he's neutral because, again, sort of like Tyrion, the flexibility. I think the interesting thing for Varys is where is his morality?
He says he serves the realm when he visits Ned to kind of inform him of what's going on, and then Ned, I believe, asks him, you know, who do you serve?
Who do you serve?
And you would think that answer implies that he's doing what he's doing for good. That it's...
You just don't know.
We don't know.
That's the thing, like, I just feel like there's a genuine sincerity in everything that he says. Like, it is true. But yet, somehow, it betrays, like, nothing about the underlying moral decision-making process of what he's saying. Which is so interesting, and maybe is a testament to the strength of that actor's ability in the role. Unless he knew something we didn't. Like, it looked like Ned was pretty much a goner.
Right.
So he had like no reason to really like tell him anything, but he sort of like has this kind of candor with him. And same kind of thing with Tyrion, you know, when he's like he like lets him know, like you mentioned earlier, it's like, you know, you've done a good thing. Like I know this, and like take that, you know. It just seemed like a very compassionate thing.
Right. Yeah. So the fact that he still communicates with essentially the damned or the shunned, that. It does hint at some moral good in him. It's just still hard to pin where is he just playing the long con right now.
Exactly, like maybe Tyrion will come back to power and that will be good, in good favor with him. Yeah, I don't know, like, I guess I'm gonna have to like sort of like wuss out on this one and be like neutral question mark, because I really like, I could see him as being like in the end like, yes, it's all come to my plan, or like he's really like a good guy all along. Like I could see them both like equally.
Yeah, but I guess if we have to put some designation on him,
neutral,
we'll do
out of confusion.
neutral.
Yeah. Alright, so yeah, I guess neutral for now. For Varys. And now let's dip to the other main side of the small council, Petyr Baelish.
Yeah, it's interesting how we've kind of went with Tyrion, who's very versatile and more for the sake of goodness. And then we have Varys, who's very versatile and, you know, in the middle. And now we come to Baelish, who is also a very versatile person, but his motives are definitely the
self-serving.
Yeah.
I would place him at neutral evil as well. If you have one axis in neutral and the other with a value that other ones supersede, so in this case, neutral evil would be true evil. And I think that is Baelish. He is just an evil, self-serving bastard that does whatever he can do to work his own angle, regardless of whether it's in the context of the law or outside it.
one of the first lines he says to Ned is, I'm not one to be trusted. So he kind of just lays the cards right out there and saying, yeah,
it doesn't make you good, though.
I'm not saying that makes you good.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that he knows who he is, and it's almost like by telling people that, and
it's like you can't blame me.
Yeah, you can't say like, oh, how dare you? It's almost like, yeah, I told you.
I think he's like super evil, like as evinced by just like he's like mean to his prostitutes. He says he loves Cat Stark, but you don't kill a family member of someone you love just because you want to possess them. That's not real love. But the one scene that I really think of is like when he broke down Ross, I think that's her name, the red-headed prostitute.
Yeah, you're a bad investment.
You're a bad investment.
Like, you can't go. You can't. There's no crying in prostitution.
Yeah, right. So, but it's like it was like super bad because it's like in the beginning it was almost it's like oh, it's okay, it's alright, you slut. And it's just like right off the bat, there's no doubt, definitely evil, and through versatility, neutral. So I think there's really not much debate on that. Petyr Baelish.
Yeah, neutral evil.
Definitely. So we have the chaoses.
Right.
We have lawful evil and lawful good, but we don't have a lawful neutral.
Mm-hmm.
So is there a character that embodies adherence to the law above all else?
I'm gonna have to go with the Hound.
Yeah, at least for much of what we've seen.
I know at the tail end of season 2, with the Battle of Blackwater, fire kind of, supersedes any sense of obedience.
But that's like a very like personal, situational thing. It's not like an ideology.
Right. It's a traumatic.
Visceral,
It's more of like a primal reaction. It's fire bad, literally.
Yeah. So
it's just like whatever, I'm out. But I think that's even why he has the name of Hound, because he's obedient like a dog.
Right.
So it's just he is that standard. I'll do whatever I'm asked to do.
Right.
Regardless of if it's good or bad.
Right, and he performs that job quite well.
Yes.
But he does seem to be like an interesting character, kind of like Jaime Lannister, in that I feel like there is a potential to shift there into maybe a double shift, like a neutral good or something like that, especially with his relationship with Sansa.
He definitely does have some affection for her.
Whether it's love or not quite clear.
But he obviously is fond of her. I think he knew that she was going to try to throw Joffrey off and kind of, stops her, but not in a way that it's obvious of her attempted murder. And just...
Yeah, it's kind of a big deal if you think about it. That sort of marks a shift maybe away from lawfulness. Like, he doesn't drag her through the streets and be like, she's treasonous or something like that,
No, but it's like his kind of lawful is almost derived out of respect. Where Joffrey, he has no respect for, and I think
that's causing at least his lawfulness to the crown to waver.
Exactly. So it's more of if he was...
Like, he's still a lawful character. It's just his personal allegiance is...
It alters it a little bit, but I think overall his philosophy is you do what you're told. And he does.
And that might be a reaction to his traumatic disfigurement, where, he's maybe looked down upon, but through his battle capability and his ability to execute and do what is asked of him, he achieves the respect of the people. I mean, that sort of, becomes his identity, and that's why he's the Hound.
But I don't know if he has respect or if it's more just fear. I think it might be more of
Well, it's still a place in society.
It is.
But what's interesting, as you sort of mentioned, is that it's kind of really cool in that what maybe put him on that path is the same thing that maybe is a catalyst to put him away from it, which is the fire.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool how a stimulus can have those
branching effects.
Yeah, or similar but opposite effects. It'd be interesting to see where they go with that character.
Right now, with his desertion, there's definitely room to spread out from that just lawful minion and see what else he's capable of.
But lawful neutral definitely for season 1 and most of season 2. So we have all the lawfuls, we have all the chaotics,
we have all the neutrals.
We have all the neutrals. Alright, so we have every slot filled, so now it's just free for all party.
Woo! Lightning round!
let's just go with the Bravosity. So first, let's look at the Faceless man. I'm going to throw out one, and you tell me if you agree.
Okay.
I'm going to say he is neutral as well, but in a completely different way from the characters that we talked about earlier. True neutral through a philosophical idea of like he mentions, like sort of like balancing the scales. These 3 lives were given; these 3 lives must be taken. It's like, just
right. He doesn't see crowns or the poor. He just sees stones to keep the scales aligned, or at least what he deems as balance. Arya kind of pulls one over on him when she states his name as her 3rd victim, and he's like, not cool.
But you get the sense that like he might have like actually done it if like he couldn't convince her otherwise. Like, he was like, bound to it.
What's funny though is it wouldn't have worked because that's not his name.
Oh,
because
he has any name he wants.
Exactly. So.
But still, like, he kind of got afraid, so that makes me think.
I don't know if it was just...
Like, I don't think it's like a names of power kind of thing, if you want to go in Dungeons & Dragons, of, like, knowing someone's true name. I think it's just, like, as long as he knows who you mean, it's good enough.
Well, yeah, because then she's like, oh, the tickler, and then he's like, okay, that works. Right. So maybe that would have been sufficient, but it was one of those things where it's like, what do you want me to do so that you revoke the name? And then she's like, help us escape. And by helping, that required killing a dozen or so people.
He's willing to fudge the math on that, so maybe that's the problem. But
yeah, so he's kind of he'll bend the rules a little bit, but I guess the way he sees it is, Arya bends the rules, so by him bending
back,
it bends it back. Yeah. He has his sense of universal balance. He doesn't always follow it to the T. But you get the sense that...
But he's always badass.
Yeah, that's a constant.
I mean, again, obviously, when it's like murder, it is like, that should be an evil thing. But I think in this kind of case, like this particular case, and it's even like spelled out in the D&D books of like, like druids, I think, or like an example, like where a druid like might kill a bunch of like villagers who are like impinging on the forest or something like that, to maintain the order. He just generally also seems like a kind of person. Besides murder,
he's a nice assassin.
Yeah. So neutral. That guy. All right. Neutral.
Goes ugly at the end.
I definitely like the first phase better, but maybe that makes me shallow. Okay, so that's one Bravosy down. Now the other Bravosian, who is?
I believe it's Syrio.
Syrio, the sword dancer. He has a fro. Let's get that out of the way. Which is
it
cool.
A fro or a perm?
I don't know, do they have perms in Westeros? Or Bravos? It's just juices and berries. So now that we got the perm out of the way.
Okay.
Alignment.
We don't have too much of a background on him other than he kicks ass.
Right.
So...
Like what?
So because of that, I might have to lean towards a neutral alignment. He doesn't really exhibit any sort of characteristics of chaotic or lawful. He just sees him in the
capacity of the teacher.
Exactly. From a morality standpoint, I would definitely think he points towards good.
Why good over neutral? There's a danger in that he's just such a likable character, you immediately want to say, oh, he's good because you like him.
Well then, when the Lannisters are essentially making their move in King's Landing, and the guards come to take Arya, without even hesitation, he comes to her protection. Even though he's got his, training sword.
And we still don't know the outcome of that.
We don't, but we do know that he
protected her.
He protected her, and he knew he was outnumbered. He knew he was, ill-equipped for the situation, but he would still, risk his life for her.
I was just playing devil's advocate. But the other side of things I might actually take dispute with is that I think he might actually be lawful by default of his art, which is a little bit of a different sense. Usually lawful or chaotic has to do with where a person fits in with society. But someone like Syrio, I think, falls into an interesting middle ground that, again, I'm drawing off the D&D books for support here. Like the monk class. It's like, if you're a practitioner of an art and that art has ways and you're like a master of that art, you've devoted yourself to that, it's a very lawful kind of thing.
Lawful in the sense that
he lives by a code of laws.
the code of sword dancing. And
and you get the sense that the sword dancing thing is like a martial art, like you said. It's like, he's trained his whole life. He's read all the books on sword danceology and stuff. I think of like the Princess Bride or whatever, like, you're using Benedict's defense against me, yes, fitting considering the rock for me. He's devoted his life to this thing, and this thing is like a, an art with laws and rules and codes and all that kind of stuff. So I think that makes you lawful.
I wish I had a class in sword danceology.
Yeah, someday.
I could see that.
Lawful good.
Lawful good.
But it's interesting because it's kind of lawful good in like a sort of different way than Ned Stark.
Right.
Yeah. Alright, lawful good. Syrio, sword dancer. So we're actually missing, now I think about it, like a whole lot of Starks. So let's go through the Stark line of everyone that we haven't talked about.
Alright, well, we'll just kind of not really worry about Bran Stark.
Because you don't really know, you don't see him much.
The youngest, his younger brother, which...
I don't remember his name.
Exactly. Yeah. That one.
Alright, so we'll disregard the younger Starks right now and move to Robert. Where do you see him as?
It's tricky because he seems like he could be a lawful person. It just, right now, things are kind of in...
Like he's going with what the circumstances require him rather than of the philosophical ideas towards the law of his father.
Right, but it's not like he wants to do that. That's why, because of that, neutral seems to fit the bill the best. And I go with good because he's definitely engaging in war for the essentially freedoms of the northern people. I don't even think he took on the title of King of the North. I think it was given to him. So it's not like he's doing this for glory or for any sort of personal gain. It's,
liberation from tyranny.
Right.
My initial instinct is to just kind of put him as like lawful good like his father, but like sort of lesser of both of them. But I think you might be right on the neutral of the law chaos axis. And now that I'm thinking of one more thing too, of his arranged marriage, and that he didn't go through with it.
Yeah, he definitely has some blemishes on his character.
I'm not even saying that's necessarily a blemish, but it's putting desires over the law of the land, which is like, you put Ned Stark in that situation, like, was it that him and Kat were like arranged?
Yeah, there was definitely some other hands at play.
So like that put some space between Ned and Robert, I think.
I think Kat had even mentioned that she didn't love him or he didn't love her, and
in the beginning
it kind of grew exactly. So
I think that definitely puts some difference, and you can justify at least writing from that of the difference of lawful and neutral between Robert and Ned.
And then another key example would be when Kat lets Jaime go into prison.
Yeah.
And law really says you gotta chop her head off. Like, that's punishable by death is a treasonous act, as letting a key prisoner go, and he didn't do it.
Yeah.
So because of that, those are things
that give a signal of non-lawful for him.
Right, but I think
I'm not sure if Ned would have killed his mother though either. So I don't know.
But then the way I also see Rob is kind of like where Ned Stark was at his age.
That's possible, and that's also maybe in line with Ned cheating with the woman, and
right.
Maybe Ned was more like Robert back then. Yeah.
Right. It's he wanted to do good. It just he still had enough, not uncertainty, but he still
just youthful selfishness.
Yeah,
in a normal kind of way.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think in that sense, it kind of all falls into place that Rob would he might be on that same path that
follow his father's trajectory.
Yeah, we don't know, but for now, I would say neutral good is a good a confident decision for him.
All right, yeah, I think you've convinced me on that. Neutral good, Robert Stark. To round out the Starks, we have one last one that's sort of not a Stark, but is Jon Snow. You know nothing, Jon Snow. He generally seems to me like someone who's just, again, largely probably because of his circumstance as a bastard, kind of trying to find some place to belong, and if that means like following your law, like I'll do that hard, I'll take the black, like I'm a man, so then I will become the Night Watchman.
Right.
But like, yet he also has this kind of like rebellious streak in him, so I'm gonna put him as neutral, I think. Mm-hmm. Even though I could see a tendency for like a desire to be lawful, but it's not really real, I think.
He wants to do it, but then he just can't pull the trigger sometimes.
Yeah, because I think it's like we talked about before, like the morality will supersede the lawfulness in this case.
Right.
Like, I'm trying to remember specifics, maybe you can help me, like when they went to the whole like incest camp or whatever with that guy who like had all those women. I know that Samuel like was like, we gotta help whatever her name is, we gotta get out of here, and like was he like, yeah, let's do this, or was it like, like, Sam, we gotta like stay here because the Night Watch and stuff. Like, I forget what that's like a key thing, whatever his position was.
That whole scene was interesting because it kind of covers the gamut of various alignments and morality decisions. So when that girl wanted to essentially escape, that was where like the lawfulness kind of came into play. Is like, we can't do that. That's not what we do. I'm sorry. But then when he noticed, I forget the guy. He was like Cranston or something like, I don't know.
Lamont Cranston from The Shadow? No, certainly not that.
I can't recall his name, but essentially when the head of the house, he noticed him going into the woods with a baby, and he realized what was going to happen, and he's like, I got to stop this, but then he got caught and knocked out. Right. But it's one of those cases
he
where
had a limit where it was like, no, the morality superseded the lawfulness.
Right. Or even during Night Watch boot camp, and the fact that he wouldn't listen to the drill sergeant to essentially beat up Sam because he's weak and feeble. It was things like that where he wants to do the right thing and he wants to follow orders, but when it seems like that following orders isn't going to be the best thing, he tends to shy away from that.
Sometimes rashly.
Yeah, or even when it comes to his encounter with Ygritte, and he had numerous opportunities to kill her.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, but is it also like, is he like in his adolescent mind somewhere going like, Ygritte's sort of hot in a weird way?
There's definitely conflicting emotions there. That might have played into not killing her, but
yeah, I think I agree with you. Like, I think what puts him, I guess, in good is that I think he just wants to know the truth of things. He couldn't just kill. Like, he wants to, if he gets any kind of sense that, like, I don't know if we're really the good guys in this situation, like, whether he's making that active decision or it's just unconscious, it's like he wants to feel it out before he makes a decision.
Or that could just be what he's saying to justify his inaction. Is, alright, because I didn't kill her, maybe I can get some information which will lead to, a better result than if I had just killed her.
Right, yeah.
We don't know, now that he's working as a potential double agent, it's possible that his alignments could shift, or it just strengthens what who he is right now. But I would say he really does want to do things for the protection of others. He essentially risked his life to kill, one of the
White Walkers.
I don't know if they called it. I don't know if that's a White Walker, but it's not. I don't think it's a white. Like
you mean like Lord of the Rings white?
Right.
Yeah. Like
I guess. I mean, we'll just say zombie because sure
that's what they are anyway.
Right, but the fact that like he kind of burned himself
because he read his D&D book. He knows zombies don't like fire. Unlike Harry Potter, by the way. I always had beef with that scene in the lake, but anyway, move on.
So the fact that he's almost literally throwing himself into danger, his intentions are good.
Alright, I'll buy it. So, for now, neutral good.
Neutral good.
Jon Snow. Oh, I just realized there's an entire continent of people that we've forgotten thus far. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah,
What am I talking about?
that place.
Give me any character from the place.
Khal Drogo.
Yeah.
Right.
He's with his eyeliner.
You can almost make a case for various alignments, lawful in the sense that he follows
The law
of his
people.
Exactly, to the T. You can almost say
they're kind of chaotic
they
in
are
general.
right, because during the wedding, it's like, oh, if there's less than 3 deaths,
It's not a good wedding.
It's considered a dull wedding. It's just kind of all over the place, so that kind of throws him into a neutral territory, depending on who's asking. If they were to describe it, they were like, oh, this is
The law. Yeah, obviously, whenever we're talking about any of these alignments, it's tricky to compress like the complexities of character into like 2 variables. So in these kind of cases, we have to sort of make a as neutral and like world level assessment as possible. So I think I agree with you. Like from Khal Drogo's perspective, he's probably like lawful. From the rest of the world, they're all chaotic.
Right.
So like from the God
Overarching.
perspective, neutral. I mean. Yeah, he's kind of a sort of rapist. But then again, that's sort of like apparently the norm.
He just seems to, I don't think he really cares. It's kind of almost like survival of the fittest. Where
And he does eventually fall in love with Dany and want to protect her and be sort of a good husband. So it's very kind of like morally gray to us looking at it. But I guess he's like the normal, the archetype of the normal Dothraki dude, which is, I guess, neutral. So that's kind of like a weak answer, but we're going to throw him in neutral.
I mean, he didn't even give 2 shits about invading Westeros until the attempted murder on Dany, and then he's like,
It's all.
it
It
was
put on like two levels of eyeshadow then. But that could not protect him from sepsis.
No, never trust a gypsy woman with a sword wound.
You just killed all my villagers, but I really want to help you. You buy this? Yes.
Yes, I guess that kind of rolls into
Daenerys?
yeah.
She's a character that I think is like just like flat out wrong on the charts, because I think people usually put her as neutral good, and that I'm going to strike. I think in the very, very beginning, like the very, very beginning of the show, she's like this beautiful girl who seems to be a victim, a classic innocent, maiden, wholesome person. So like I really get that initial like neutral good, but I definitely think there's been sort of like a march towards not evil, but like definitely neutral, I think.
Right. It's almost like saying she's not being evil, it's being less good.
Like a hardened survivor kind of thing. She's kind of trying on this mantle of being like regal and noble and like the military like pragmatist. Gradually it seems like that mantle is becoming part of like who she really is.
There's definitely, I'd say, she would be the character that has, I guess, the most defining shift between season 1 and 2. Kind of experiencing a lifetime of everything from love to pain in a very brief... Right, and I think she's just, strong internally that she's able to, like, deal with this slew of hardships all at once, but it is taking its toll on her.
Yeah, and I do think it does make an actual alignment shift, because it's like in the beginning, like you get the sense that like she doesn't care about Westeros. Like that's like Viserys' deal. He like overpowers her into like accepting that fate. But like now she like wants the throne. Like she wants to assert her power. And if you have that kind of angle, that ambition, which I think in some sense is kind of blind, that's not good. That's just like ambition, really.
Right, and
not evil.
No,
yeah,
but you definitely can see how there is the potential for being more, chaotic evil, depending on how that mentality takes her.
Yeah, like I think that I can see it go either way. Like she could either just go like fully descent, like become like another Mad King, or like be like, oh, like what am I doing? But the point that I think was like a key point later in season 2 was with the vault with the Qarthian noble and her friend when she like locked them in.
Right.
Like, that was the point. I think even like Jorah Mormont was like, that was pretty harsh.
I would say that's a pretty defining moment of
The gloves are off now.
Yeah.
Kid gloves are off.
I mean, she did burn the shaman that murdered Khal Drogo, but that was more of like a...
That was like like you can justify that as like a crime of passion.
Yeah, it wasn't what she would have done. It was just more of like a revenge.
But the other thing was more of like a cold, calculated, like, you've crossed me and this is what you get. You know?
Yeah, there was no hesitation. It's like, essentially, not only are you going to die, it's just going to be,
like a slow...
agonizing. It was an interesting scene.
Well, it's just something like, again, maybe this is like personalizing or whatever, but like, I'm thinking to myself, it's like, could I ever do that to someone? Like, even if they've done something really bad to me, I'm like, I don't think so. Like, well, she did it. So it's like,
all right.
But
that's definitely not good.
Yeah. But like, you get the sense she could bounce back. But for now, we like neutral.
Yeah, we'll go with neutral.
So Daenerys Targaryen, neutral. But I also think it's kind of interesting because this neutral was also very different from the other ones we've discussed.
Yeah, I would say her standing is the most fluid in that it's kind of ready to shift at a moment's notice.
Right, so since we mentioned him briefly, we might as well just include Viserys Targaryen, who I think is an easy one. What do you got?
I would say, I mean, it looks like he would be a good candidate for chaotic evil. He's kind of all over the place. He's very unstable. He's done bad things, but I would say he's probably more closer to Joffrey.
That's what I was
lawful.
saying.
Like, if he were to ascend to the throne, he would be a tyrant.
Yeah,
and in that sense,
that's what he wants. He wants to, like, in everything he's done, including his own sister, he wants to assert like the dominance of his birthright as his vehicle of like, you have to do what I say because I am the rightful heir,
and that's how the rules go.
And that's how I'm going to oppress you and be evil. That's the vehicle.
Yeah. So definitely evil, but again, it's just because he's mentally unstable does not indicate chaotic tendencies.
Although I kind of like, now that you've mentioned it, you've like sort of swung my position a little bit. Actually, I still think he's lawful evil now. Then he'll never have the chance to fulfill this potential. But I think he has the potential to shift into chaotic evil because in a more so way than Joffrey, he like really is unstable. Like, you get the sense that like if things like didn't go his way enough times, he would just like flip the shit out and just go like nuts.
It's a very volatile lawful evil, and based on just his actions and his driving force.
Before the face melting.
Before his golden coronation, was driven more from lawful things of
tyranny.
Yes.
Yeah. So lawful evil, Viserys Targaryen, comfortable with that.
Yep.
Oh, there is one person we forgot from that side who is probably the most interesting. Jorah Mormont. We mentioned him but didn't get into it. This is a tricky one. What do you got?
It's tough because on one hand, he received some pardon, which one would assume is based on him doing something to earn that.
Like setting up the assassination.
Exactly. The fact that he kind of goes against it makes you wonder if he's where his allegiance truly is. He tends to follow Dany.
I think it's apparent that he's totally in love with her.
Yeah.
Like, really in love with her.
Right. And
But we have to be careful about using it. Like, just because someone is totally devoted to someone else because of a personal attachment, it doesn't necessarily mean they're lawful or they're good. It's just like they have really personal allegiance to that person. And you have to think of it in the broader sense, like what this person would do with a stranger.
I think he would, at least from what I've seen, he seems like the guy that would want to help someone out.
In a sense, what I find so problematic with him is not from what I see of him, because I agree with you, it's from what you hear of him from other characters. That
right.
From everything that you see, he looks to me just like neutral good. Like, he's fluid with the law, and he just seems to be like a generally like nice, kind, compassionate, wise counselor to Dany. And one thing that I think speaks to that moral goodness is that it's obvious that he loves her, but he doesn't let that get in the way of his protection and guidance of her. Like, he places his respect for her above his desire for her, which I think is something that only a rare moral character would do. So that all speaks to like neutral good to me. But then you hear like, you know, he was a slave trafficker, which is obviously, you know, bad news bears there. You know, he might have been involved with, you know, being a double agent and being like, you know, setting up the assassination. But, you know, you don't see any of that. And you see just like this wise counselor. And with that whole Dany slip that we were talking about, like, you get the sense that like he's concerned about her moral slippage. You know, like his voice is written like, "Are you sure you want to do this? You know, I think you're being cruel." Like, maybe I'm paraphrasing it wrong, but you get the sense that he does not want her soul to become corrupt. Which sort of speaks to the fact that then, you know, he's not corrupt.
Yeah, it's... At least right now, I don't get the sense that he's kind of telling her to, you know, scale things back a bit for personal gain. Like, don't screw up so then I can, you know...
Exploit you
at a later point. Who knows if that's his objective. Right now, I'm not seeing it. So... But it's just that history, how much of that is actually true and what's just, you know, rumors and hearsay and things like that. I'd still, I guess, would lean towards good just based on the actions as portrayed in the show.
Yes, from what we see, I'm really comfortable with the neutral good designation. Jorah Mormont, neutral good.
I'll go with that.
Alright, so I think that rounds out the Essos group, if that's the name of the continent. There's a couple of other minor characters that popped up into my head that we can do real quick, I think. One of which being Brienne, I think, the female knight awesome. Do you have a quick assessment for her?
I would say probably lawful neutral.
My debate is between lawful neutral and lawful good. Do you think, like, I think the lawfulness might supersede, but yet I think the way she chooses the person to follow might speak to her morality. Because doesn't she say like something about like Cat, you know, like, you know, you have a certain kind of strength that I could follow or something like that.
Right, but
like, could you see her being like a hound? That's the question. Could you see her equally dispensing justice regardless of the morality of it?
Well, I mean, she is essentially transporting Jaime based on Cat, and we don't know what sort of ends that will bring. And she never really said, "I want to serve the people." It's, "I will serve you." Like, I don't serve the Starks. I serve Cat.
Do you think though, like, if Cat Stark was like, kill those children, she'd do it?
That's tricky to say. I think if Cat made a decent argument to say, like, this is what needs to be done,
But that's a moral argument. That's what I'm trying to say, is that she'd have to appeal to the morality. So I think if that's the case, that might put her into lawful good. Like, a lawful neutral character would be like, okay, I'll do it, it's done, without questioning, like, why do I have to do this? Convince me. But I feel like Brienne would be that.
It could be.
I don't know. We're extrapolating here from very little footage.
Right.
Or I'm extrapolating.
Yeah, I mean, I'll still stick with lawful neutral.
You can convince me of lawful neutral for now. Because I'd have to be inferring to leap out of that. But what we see is lawful neutral. So Brienne, lawful neutral. Now, since we're talking about sort of sidekicky type characters, what about Tyrion's men, Bronn?
Bronn, he's... you can tell from what you've heard from him and others, he's done some terrible things. So you would think, oh, he's a bad person. It's just almost similar to the Faceless man. He just does what he does because he's good at it and he's paid to do it.
I don't know, man, because I think he's just like a survivor and an opportunist, and I think, I'm going to say that I feel he's chaotic evil. Definitely chaotic. Like, he can exist in the lawful world, but you get the sense that, like, he doesn't really care to. You know, like, this is all bullshit, or whatever. You know, like, if he had his way, he's just, like, you know, a rollicking, you know, like, brigand, basically. You know, so I think I'm comfortable with chaos. And evil, like, I think he is. Like, he's a cutthroat, he's a murderer, he'd kill anyone just for a dime, whatever. But, like, I think it's that, because he has a loyalty to Tyrion, and he's charming. He's just a cool character. You want to like him, and therefore, like, elevate his morality in your mind. But, you know, I think it's even clearer, like, with Tyrion, like, kind of like, yeah, I'd backstab you, you know, if someone has the right coin. Like, you know that, I know that, so we can have a good friendship. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I think there was that that line that I forget who asks, maybe Tyrion asks, it's like, would you kill children? And then he said, how much? Like, what are we
talking about here?
Right.
Yeah, so I think he has to be evil. He's just very likable evil.
It's interesting, though, because it's like right now he's been following Tyrion, and obviously he's getting some sort of compensation out of it. But now that Tyrion's no longer in an elevated role, where is Bronn gonna now go?
I don't know. All indications seem to me, even like outright stated, as chaotic evil.
Yeah, I won't argue that. It's just interesting how
he can work with a neutral good character. Before we wrap things up, because it's been quite a while, we've actually missed out some crucial figures here, the heads of the houses.
Yeah,
which is
that's so easy to overlook.
It's a pretty big oversight. So hopefully they will be easy and quick, but we shall see. So let's start out with Catelyn Stark.
I was thinking neutral good.
That's my intuition without thought as well.
She does have some moments where she does do things that are not characteristic, but I think in the grand scheme of things, she wants what's best.
The neutrality, I think, is on the lawful side is clear, because I think I can just picture some scenes with her and like Ned, where like she's kind of like advocating for like a less lawful, like just do this or whatever, and Ned's like, I gotta do this or whatever,
Yeah.
So she's definitely not like lawful like Ned, but not chaotic certainly. So I think that's fine. But I generally do feel like if like she was like wandering with Brienne and a couple of people and came into a town where like children were being oppressed or something like that, she would be like, nah, my watch, son. So I do feel like she is like good in general too.
Right. If you said neutral good, I'd say that works. I wouldn't really have any qualms with that.
Yeah. All right. So Catelyn Stark, neutral good.
Neutral good.
So let's jump to the other house, the other major house.
Tywin. Yeah, he's again
interesting character.
It's
interesting actor too.
Yeah, the intro to the character when he's skinning the. I guess it was a deer.
Yeah, I think so.
Or a deer-like creature. I think that was an actual carcass that he was skinning and gutting.
Like the actor?
Right.
Like for realsies?
Right.
It's pretty hardcore.
I think so, and I don't know if it took several takes. So,
but anyway, I think we're ranging here.
Yeah, we're going.
I'm assuming that you're going to say that this speaks to something of his getting he's a man who gets in the dirty work himself too. He's not just a delegator.
Right. He's a man of action. So that whole scene when you first see him with the carcass and kind of deliberating with Jaime on what he expects of him, it's just interesting to see that how here he is at his task, but at the same time enforcing his parenting style on
Jaime.
Right. So it's like he's both like general and father at that one moment.
So would you have an alignment pick, strong pick for him?
I would say lawful neutral. Which
I'm with you on that.
May not be a popular choice, but it's almost as if to preserve the Lannister name, some things have to be done.
And when things are not that way, he'll step in to right the ship and preserve social order and the pride of his house.
Yeah, his philosophy is to follow the law of the land.
And kind of create the law of the land too. But yeah, I just get the sense, even with his interactions with Arya and everything you see him, you don't get the sense that he's an evil bastard. It's just he's for order.
He's
his order.
He's
So we're confident with lawful. I'm confident in that.
Yeah, I would say Tywin lawful
neutral. Yeah. And there's another major Lannister that we also omitted, Cersei. I mean, I think most people put her in evil no problem, right? She's one of the major antagonists of the whole series.
Right, a lot. Pretty much, I think almost every event that has taken place was her as kind of the catalyst in some degree. So that selfishness in having that power.
Yeah. So confident in evil. What about lawful or neutral? Because it's not chaos. All Lannisters kind of have a lawful element because of their station and how they operate.
If I look at it from a neutral standpoint of, all right, how does she act? Is she kind of apathetic to the situation? Sometimes you get some hints of that. At the same time, she is kind of essentially exploiting the rules that exist. I mean, I might have to go with lawful in that category.
Yeah, I think I have to go with lawful too, just because that's just how she operates.
Maybe that's not what she wants to be. Like, when she was drunk in the one
Playing the nice drinking game with Sansa.
Right.
In the death room.
Right. Every time you point out a sucky quality of your life, you take a shot, and I think she was like 5 bottles in.
Yeah. But even in that, it's like it reinforces her lawful position though, because she kind of explains like this is what you have to do if you're in this situation, and that's just what I am. Yeah.
Right.
And kind of justifying like this is why I have to be that way.
I'm not a bad person. I just do bad things.
Yeah.
Something like that.
What's interesting is that whole speech also informs the morality too, and this is the point that I think is interesting and is worth raising, is that Cersei, you don't get the sense that she's evil like Joffrey is, or like Viserys. Like, not someone who would go out of their way just to like oppress and kill people or whatever. It's just that like she's very defensive. I think she even says, I forget to who, but she's like, anyone who isn't one of us is an enemy. Right. Which makes sense in the scenario that where people are politicking and killing each other for the throne and stuff. So you get a real sense of justification behind her. But like, again, this is a case where as the viewer, as the observer, you have to see like, does that personal view of what's good and not align with what you would think of as universal? And Cersei, I think
it's interesting though how the way the show is shaped up. It's they make the Starks perceived as the good guys and the Lannisters as the bad guys, and you just have to wonder through the perspectives of each family. They think they're the good guys. All we can really work with is our perceptions. So even with all of these different designations we've come with, it's not like, oh, this is it.
This is the law, yeah.
Right. This is, no other chart will be correct or anything like that. As we've discussed, there are a lot of ways you can interpret these things, and from these discussions, I'd say these are not, these are pretty good. They're not knee-jerk decisions. It's kind of
we're also weighing the characters against the pantheon of the other characters. So
right,
at least there's a reference. There's a sort of internal referencing point there, like that.
Yeah. So in that sense, I think we got a good amount of these pretty nailed down. A lot, though, is still very debatable.
Yeah. And there's one final leader of a house that we have to discuss, which is Stannis Baratheon.
Yeah, him, it's very deceptive in just the way he's perceived in the show, because a lot of it is influenced by Melisandre. So I think if we were to remove her from the equation and see what character he is, it probably would also be lawful neutral.
Yeah, I see him very much cut from the same cloth as Tywin, but Melisandre is a complicating factor with her feminine charms and wiles.
Right, and he definitely digs the fire in multiple definitions.
Yes, his alignment might be shifting down towards definitely evil-ish, and maybe even neutral off the lawful, because kind of killing your brother, especially like one of the Baratheon, the king family, it's like that seems like it's a negative point on like both like lawful and
right.
Good. So maybe he's fluid as well. I mean, but still up until now, because didn't he kind of like sort of
snap out of it?
Like he got pissed at Melisandre at some point, right?
He for a moment he realized, holy shit, I just killed my brother.
What am I doing?
What the hell's going on? It was just.
Then she showed him the fire.
Yeah, and then he's like, "Holy shit, this is fucking awesome!" All right, let's keep fighting.
So I guess Stannis Baratheon, lawful neutral.
Lawful neutral, but definitely in, like you said, in motion.
In motion. All right, so the hour is getting late, but there is one character that we forgot. You know, it's sad that we have to end with him. But
Is it Theon Greyjoy?
Theon Greyjoy.
He's definitely I wouldn't even call him an opportunist, because an opportunist knows when to.
He's just kind of like acting like he's like lashing out.
It's just any sort of dominating father figure that he comes in contact with, he now follows them.
Yeah.
So when Ned was kind of, still in charge, he was a better guy.
Yeah.
Now that he's gone and not having that brotherly connection with Robb,
Now he's choosing to have, instead of very sisterly connection.
he just seems, he's not a man of conviction.
He doesn't have spine. I think
No.
that's how it boils down there. He might fit into neutral because of that reason. I don't think he's evil, although obviously,
He's done some bad
burning
stuff.
a couple of
Orphans.
farmer children isn't
Yeah.
so great. But you just get the sense that these aren't like reasoned choices. That he's just like, I don't know what the fuck to do, so burn those kids, like.
I guess for all the characters that do put up a front of some sort, his is like paper thin.
Yeah, and it just makes no sense to me. Like, I don't get it. Like, he has a kind of sweet deal going on with the Starks, and like, let's be honest, like the Greyjoys' whole deal kind of like sucks.
To me, that house just seems like it's trying too hard. Like,
The iron price.
is that gold or is it iron? And
Right, even the words suck. It's like, if you're already dead and sucking, you can suck no harder.
something with drowning and death. I
Yeah.
don't know.
It's not really, it's not very inspiring, and the whole place is just like, it's like that one old guy that looks like Filch, just like the king, right?
Yeah.
And then like a bunch of like, haggard looking women in a desolate, unkempt castle.
It just
on an
looks.
eerie lake. I guess the whole deal is he just has some serious daddy abandonment issues.
He's just a whiny douche.
Yeah.
I think that's in alignment.
Yeah, it's like neutral dude.
Yes. He did have a good speech, though. I'll give him that.
Yeah. All right. Whew. Well, this conversation went a lot deeper and longer than expected. Hopefully, we were able to at least provide a little bit more like rigorous D&D style alignment analysis, because I think the charts that are out there are mainly kind of just like knee-jerk choices, some of which do line up with what we said. But,
Yeah, and again, even if we disagree with what some others say, it's really all in opinion.
But yeah, I guess we'll put our chart or version of our chart as a link in the description. Obviously, it might be a little crowded with a lot of people in certain slots, but I guess to make it more canonical, we can choose kind of like the best, most representative person in each slot,
Right.
and make like a memeable chart that you guys can have fun with. So.
Maybe like a B team chart.
All right, so I guess that's about it for the first installment of the new segment on our channel, Head Games.
If you have any suggestions, ideas, let us know, and we'll definitely take them into consideration.
Sounds good.
We'll see you next time on Retromancers.